She died in his arms. The gorilla of Virunga, known to the world as Ndakasi, took her final breath cradled against the man who had once saved her life. Around them the jungle was silent. No wind, no birds, only the sound of rain falling softly on the tin roof of the sanctuary. This is not fiction. This is a true story, recreated with the help of artificial intelligence, because the world needs to hear it, because what happened in Virunga was more than a farewell. It was proof that love can exist between two souls who were never meant to meet. He whispered her name again and again, his voice trembling as if speaking could hold her in this world a little longer. For 14 years, Andre Bauma had been her guardian, her shelter, her family. And now, as her heartbeat faded, he wasn't holding a wild animal. He was holding a friend, a daughter, a part of himself. She died in his arms, but her story didn't end there. Hours earlier, the park had been filled with laughter. The rangers, the caretakers, the gentle rhythm of daily life inside the Virunga National Park, home to the world's last mountain gorillas. No one knew that day would be her last. No one knew that a single photograph, Andre's arms wrapped around her fading body, would one day circle the globe and remind millions that compassion still exists. And as the rain grew heavier, Andre looked out toward the forest line, the same place where he had found her years ago, small, shivering, orphaned, and crying over the body of her mother. That memory, buried deep, rose again like a storm. The end had brought him back to the beginning. Because before this final moment, before the tears, the silence, and the goodbye, there was another story, a story of rescue, of hope, of a bond that would defy every boundary between man and nature. And to truly understand what happened here, we must go back to where it all began, the night the jungle found its guardian. It began 14 years before that rainy night. Deep within the Emerald Mountains of the Virunga National Park, rangers followed the faint cries of a newborn gorilla echoing through the mist. When they found her, she was clinging to the lifeless body of her mother, small, trembling, and alone. That tiny creature would one day be known as Ndakasi, the gorilla who would change how the world sees compassion. This is a true story, one that bridges the fragile line between man and nature, between survival and love. Among the men who rushed through the mud that morning was Andre Bauma, a young caretaker whose eyes carried both exhaustion and hope. When he saw the infant gorilla, something inside him shifted. She wasn't just another rescue. She was a heartbeat lost in a war that had already taken too much from this land. He wrapped her in a blanket, pressed her against his chest, and whispered, "You're safe now." From that moment, their lives became one thread woven by fate itself. The world outside Virunga was chaos, poachers, armed conflicts, the constant hum of danger. But inside the sanctuary walls, time moved differently. Andre would sleep beside her every night to keep her warm, his heartbeat guiding hers. He would later say that when he looked into Ndakasi's eyes, he saw something human, pain, joy, and trust. The gorilla of Virunga had found her home not in the jungle, but in the heart of a man who refused to let her die in fear. Months passed. The baby grew stronger, her eyes brighter. Her playful nature brought laughter to a place that had long forgotten what hope sounded like. The other caretakers called her the Smile of Virunga. Tourists and journalists began to visit, amazed at how a creature born in tragedy could embody so much life. Yet for Andre, she wasn't a symbol. She was family. But even then, in moments of peace, a shadow lingered. Andre knew the jungle could give life and take it away without warning. Every time he watched Ndakasi sleep, he wondered if love could ever be enough to protect what was wild. He didn't know it yet, but that question, the very one that kept him awake at night, would become the story that defined them both. The jungle never sleeps. Even in silence, it breathes, a living heartbeat under the canopy of Virunga. That night, the air was heavy with rain and gunfire in the distance. A group of rangers moved through the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the mist. They were searching for survivors, not of war, but of something quieter, crueler. A family of gorillas had been found, and only one cry echoed through the rain. Andre Bauma was among them. The youngest of the rangers, he carried no weapon that night, only a blanket, a flashlight, and hope. When the beam of his light caught the small body huddled against the mud, time froze. The gorilla of Virunga, no bigger than his arm, pressed her tiny hands against her mother's still chest. She was breathing, barely. The rest of the troop was gone. She was all that remained. Andre knelt beside her. His hands trembled as he touched her back, expecting her to flinch, to run. But she didn't. She just looked up, her dark eyes meeting his, full of confusion and fear. And in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, a silent promise that would change both of their lives. He lifted her gently, feeling the warmth of life still pulsing beneath her trembling skin. He wrapped her in the blanket and held her close as the rain poured harder. Around him the forest whispered, the crack of branches, the growl of thunder, the rhythm of a world that rarely forgave weakness. But in his arms there was something fragile and pure, a heartbeat that refused to stop. He whispered softly, "You'll be safe now," not knowing those words would echo through 14 years of devotion. Back at the sanctuary, under flickering lights and the smell of damp earth, Andre stayed awake through the night. He laid the infant on his chest, keeping her warm with his own body. Her breathing slowed, steadied, then matched his. Somewhere between his heartbeat and hers, a bond was born, not out of obligation, but out of love. And that love would become the strongest force in both their worlds. When dawn broke, the mist began to lift, and Ndakasi, though she did not yet have a name, opened her eyes fully for the first time since the attack. She blinked at the sunlight as if seeing hope itself. Andre smiled for the first time in weeks. Outside, the jungle roared back to life, and the gunfire was replaced by birdsong. For one fragile morning, Virunga was at peace. The caretakers gathered around. Some said she wouldn't survive. Others said it was better to let nature decide, but Andre wouldn't listen. "If we let her go," he said, "what will be left of us?" His voice carried the weight of a man who had seen too much death, too much loss. Saving her wasn't just about compassion, it was about remembering what made them human. He named her Ndakasi, the one who brings light. In a place shadowed by war, that name meant everything. It was a declaration of defiance, a whisper against the darkness that had taken so much. And every night, as the world outside collapsed into chaos, Andre would lie beside her, heartbeat to heartbeat, reminding her that love could be louder than fear. Weeks turned into months, and Ndakasi grew stronger. Her tiny hands began to tug at his beard, her laughter filling the air. The rangers who once doubted began to smile again. Hope, fragile, stubborn, beautiful, had returned to Virunga. And in the heart of the jungle, one man and one gorilla rewrote what survival meant. Because sometimes survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about holding on to something worth living for. That night, in the middle of the rain and gunfire, a new kind of miracle was born. One that would echo far beyond the forest. The night she survived became the night the world was given a reason to believe again. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but also wonder. Each morning, Andre woke to the soft sound of Ndakasi's breath beside him, proof that life still pulsed inside a body once destined to fade. He built her a small bed of blankets, though she preferred his arms. She clung to him with the same strength she once used to hold her mother. In her eyes, the world was beginning again. Caring for a gorilla was nothing short of raising a child. Andre learned to mix her milk, to bathe her, gently to sing when storms frightened her at night. The other rangers began calling him Papa Andre. He laughed at first, but the name stayed, because that's exactly what he had become. He wasn't just protecting her life, he was rebuilding her trust in it. As the months passed, Ndakasi's fur grew thick, her eyes brighter. She would crawl into Andre's lap, inspecting his face with curious fingers, as if trying to understand what kind of creature could care so deeply. When she laughed, everyone in the sanctuary laughed with her. Her joy became contagious, a small revolution of hope in a place that had known only loss. Visitors from around the world began arriving at Virunga National Park, drawn by stories of the gorilla of Virunga who had survived against all odds. They expected to see tragedy, but found something entirely different, a friendship that defied nature itself. Photographers captured her playful poses, her mischievous smile, her moments resting on Andre's shoulder like a child. Every image told the same truth. Love had rebuilt what cruelty had broken. Andre often said that Ndakasi had saved him too. Before her, he had nearly given up, tired of war, of loss, of endless funerals. But when she wrapped her tiny hand around his finger for the first time, something inside him healed. "She taught me how to live again," he said once, his voice breaking. "She reminded me what peace feels like." As the years passed, their bond only deepened. When Andre walked, she followed. When he laughed, she copied his grin. They shared food, silence, even moods. The sanctuary staff joked that she was becoming more human every day. But to Andre, it wasn't imitation, it was reflection. "She mirrors what's inside us," he told a journalist. "Maybe that's why we're so afraid to see it." The world beyond Virunga began to notice. One photo showing Ndakasi sitting upright beside Andre, smiling like a person posing for a family portrait, went viral. Millions were captivated by her expression, calm, wise, almost human. For a fleeting moment, humanity saw itself in her face. People who had never cared about gorillas began donating to conservation. Children wrote letters to Virunga saying they wanted to grow up to protect animals like her. But inside the sanctuary, nothing felt like fame. Andre still woke before dawn, still cleaned her enclosure, still whispered goodnight. Every day was an act of quiet devotion. "The world sees a gorilla," he once said, "but I see a soul." And when he said it, he wasn't speaking to the cameras, he was speaking to her. Years of danger still loomed outside the park, poachers, rebels, disease. Yet within those walls, hope had taken root. Ndakasi's story had become a shield against despair. Every life she touched, from Andre to the children who watched her on screens across the world, carried a spark of that same light. In a world constantly breaking itself apart, she was proof that connection could still hold it together. Because sometimes the most powerful change doesn't begin in governments or wars. It begins in the quiet heartbeat of compassion. Ndakasi wasn't just the gorilla of Virunga anymore. She had become its spirit, a reminder that healing, no matter how fragile, always begins with love. Outside the walls of the sanctuary, the world was unraveling. The Congo had never been kind to those who tried to protect it. Gunfire echoed across the valleys at night, and the rangers of Virunga National Park often left in the morning, unsure if they would return. Andre had learned to live with danger, to expect it like rain. But every time he looked at Ndakasi, he felt a reason to stay alive. She was his anchor in a storm that never ended. There were nights when the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The sound of poachers moving through the dark, footsteps on wet leaves, the metallic click of rifles, became a reminder that life in Virunga was fragile. The park's gorillas were priceless to those who saw them as trophies, and invisible to those who didn't see them at all. But to Andre, each one was sacred. Every life mattered. One evening, gunfire broke the silence near the sanctuary. Andre hid Ndakasi under the wooden table in their small shelter. She didn't understand the noise, only that her father's arms were shaking. He whispered, "Shh, it's all right," though his eyes betrayed the fear he'd learned to hide. When the shooting stopped, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I promised you safety," he whispered, "and I intend to keep it." Weeks later, the rangers returned with news of loss. Another caretaker gone, another animal missing. But even in grief, Andre refused to let bitterness take root. "We fight darkness with light," he told the younger rangers. "That's what she teaches me." His words spread through the team, quiet but powerful. In a place haunted by violence, he had become their reminder that compassion could still exist. Disease soon followed. The same hands that cared for Ndakasi now had to bury friends and colleagues. The sanctuary became both a refuge and a battlefield, between hope and despair, love and loss. Ndakasi would sit close to Andre, sensing his sadness, resting her head on his shoulder. She couldn't speak, but her presence said, "Everything, I'm still here." When a virus threatened the guerrillas, Andre moved into isolation with her. For months, he barely saw another person. He slept on the cold floor beside her enclosure, feeding her, cleaning, waiting. "If she goes," he said, "I go with her." It wasn't a declaration of duty. It was love, the kind that chooses sacrifice over safety. Outside, the world began to hear whispers of Virunga again. Journalists, filmmakers, and scientists came to witness what they called the front line of conservation. But what they found wasn't a story of war. It was a story of connection. They watched as a man risked everything, not for fame or science, but for the simple truth that kindness could still heal what cruelty had destroyed. One reporter wrote, "In a land torn apart by greed, there is a man who chooses love." That article spread around the world, and for the first time, donations poured in. People who had never heard of the Congo now spoke the name Ndakasi with reverence. The gorilla who once clung to her mother's body was now a symbol of courage, not just for wildlife, but for humanity itself. Still, Andre knew peace was never permanent. Every sunrise felt like borrowed time. He began writing letters, documenting her life, not for fame, but for memory. "One day," he wrote, "people will need to remember that love once lived here." He didn't know those words would become prophecy. Through it all, Ndakasi remained the same, playful, curious, unbroken. When the world outside burned, she kept laughing, and that laughter, light and childlike, became their shield. In a place defined by danger, she was proof that the soul could survive anything, because even in a world drowning in noise, the quiet sound of love, steady and pure, can still silence the guns. Time is quiet when it begins to slip away. It doesn't shout, it whispers. The first signs came slowly. A shorter breath, a quieter morning, a weight in Ndakasi's eyes that Andre had never seen before. At first, he told himself it was nothing. She had survived worse. She was the miracle of Virunga, but deep inside, he knew the jungle had its own clock and it was starting to run out. He spent more time by her side, cancelling meetings, skipping meals. She no longer played as much, preferring to rest with her head against his lap. Sometimes she looked at him for long moments, as if memorizing his face. He would smile, pretending everything was fine, pretending she didn't already know. Animals always know, especially the ones who have learned to love. The veterinarians came and went, their voices low, their faces heavy. Tests, medicine, hope. Then silence. "She's tired," one of them said softly. Andre nodded, but his heart refused to accept it. He had fought wars, hunger, loss, but this was different. You can't fight time. You can only love through it. At night, he sat outside her enclosure, listening to the rhythm of her breathing. Sometimes it was steady, other times uneven. He'd close his eyes and pray. not for her to stay, but for her not to suffer. If this is her time, he whispered to the stars, let it be peaceful. He never knew if anyone heard, but the act of saying it kept him whole. Weeks passed. The world beyond Virunga continued. New wars, new politics, new distractions. But inside the sanctuary, everything slowed. Every second felt precious. Andre began taking more photos, recording small moments. Her smile, her gaze, her hand reaching for his. He wanted to freeze what the world would one day forget. The way love looks when it knows it's running out of time. One afternoon, Ndakasi reached for him weakly, resting her hand against his chest. He placed his palm over hers. No words, no sound, just a shared silence that spoke louder than anything they'd ever said. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the entire story of their lives: pain, joy, gratitude, and something beyond, peace. It was as if she was saying, "You kept your promise." That night, Andre stayed beside her. He read to her softly, telling stories about the jungle, about the day they met, about the rangers who still fought to protect what she represented. Her eyes flickered at the sound of his voice. For a moment, he could almost believe time had stopped again. Like the night he first found her, trembling and alive. When dawn came, the air was still, and Ndakasi didn't move, but her presence filled the room. Andre knew before anyone told him. He rested his hand on her and whispered, "You can rest now, little one. You did what you came to do." Outside, the forest began to stir. Birds calling, wind rising, life moving forward, as if the world itself paused to say goodbye. In the days that followed, the sanctuary grew silent. Rangers walked slower. Even the animals seemed to sense the absence. But amid the sorrow, something else took root: gratitude. Because for 14 years, in one of the most dangerous places on Earth, a gorilla and a man had proven that love can survive anything, even loss. And somewhere in that silence, Andre understood. She hadn't truly left. Every soul she had touched, his, the rangers, the millions who saw her photo, carried her forward. Love like that doesn't end. It simply changes form, finding new hearts to live in. The morning she left this world, the light fell differently on Virunga. It was soft, golden, the kind of light that carries both endings and beginnings. Andre walked into the sanctuary quietly, his steps measured, his heart heavy yet calm. He had already cried all his tears. Now there was only gratitude left. Ndakasi lay in her corner, her breathing faint but steady, as if the forest itself was holding her up for one more moment. He sat beside her and took her hand. The same hand that had once clung to his shirt as a frightened infant now rested in his palm, fragile but familiar. He whispered stories of the night they met, of the years they shared, of the laughter that filled the walls of their small world. She blinked slowly, as though she understood. And maybe she did, because love, real love, doesn't need language. It just exists, quiet, unshakable, eternal. Outside, the rangers gathered in silence. They had seen death before, but not like this. This wasn't loss. It was a passage, a reminder that even in the wild, even in the hardest places on Earth, compassion could leave a mark deeper than fear. Some lowered their heads, others looked toward the sky. Everyone felt it, the weight of a goodbye that belonged to all of them. Andre leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers, the same way he had done 14 years earlier on the night she survived. Rain began to fall, not hard, but soft, rhythmic, almost like the heartbeat they once shared. He held her, his arms steady, his breath slow. "You can go," he whispered. "You've done enough. You changed the world, my girl." Her eyes met his one last time, and then peace. For a long while he didn't move. He just stayed there, holding her as if letting go would erase everything they'd built. But he didn't feel emptiness. He felt fullness, a quiet knowing that love had completed its circle. The beginning had met the end, and the story was whole. Later, when the photo was taken, the one that would travel across continents and touch millions, Andre didn't pose. He simply stayed as he was, arms around her, head bowed, eyes closed. That image, frozen in time, became more than a photograph. It became a mirror, showing the world what humanity still had the power to be. When the picture reached the outside world, something unexpected happened. People stopped scrolling. They felt something. In a time where compassion often feels distant, that single image reawakened it. It reminded millions that love doesn't belong to one species. It belongs to life itself. Letters arrived at the park, donations poured in, and everywhere people whispered the same name, Ndakasi. In the weeks that followed, Andre stayed quiet. He worked, he prayed, and every evening he sat by the tree near her resting place. Sometimes he spoke to her out loud, sometimes only in thought. He said he could still feel her, not as pain, but as peace. "You taught me that love never dies," he once told a visitor. "It just changes where it lives." The sanctuary slowly returned to rhythm. New gorillas came under their care. Life began again, as it always does. But something invisible had shifted. Ndakasi's presence lingered, in the laughter of the caretakers, in the courage of the rangers, in the eyes of those who came to see where she had lived. She was gone, and yet somehow she was everywhere. Because in the end, it wasn't a story about loss. It was a story about love. A kind of love that rebuilds, that heals, that reminds the world what it's meant to be. Andre didn't just lose a gorilla, he found a truth the world had forgotten, that compassion, even in the darkest places, is the only thing strong enough to outlive death. In the years that followed, the world never forgot the image. A man holding a gorilla as if cradling his own child. It became more than a story. It became a symbol. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Scientists quoted it in lectures. Artists painted it. And somewhere in every corner of the world, someone saw that photo and remembered that kindness is still possible. Virunga was no longer just a park on a map. It had become a reminder of what it means to be human. Andre still walks the same paths. Each morning, the mist curling around his feet. He says the forest feels different now, softer somehow. When the wind passes through the trees, he hears laughter. When the rain falls, he feels warmth. "She's here," he says, smiling. "Not gone, just changed." He believes that every act of compassion, no matter how small, keeps her alive. And maybe he's right, because some souls don't fade. They multiply. And Ndakasi's story was born in tragedy, but ended in love. It proved that connection can outlast fear, that devotion can heal what violence destroys. And as long as her story is told, she still lives, in the hearts of those who choose empathy over indifference, love over apathy, courage over despair. Because somewhere between man and nature, between life and what comes after, there is something eternal, and its name is love.